Welcome back to Triple Goddess Soapery. My name is Angela, and today we are going to be doing a tutorial on soapcalc.net. Now, I belong to many different Facebook groups. I follow a multitude of different soap makers all over the various social media platforms, and one of the questions I see most across all platforms is, hey, I'm a new soap maker, teach me how to make soap, or B, I'm a new soap maker, give me a recipe. Now, I think that this might frustrate a lot of soap makers, but also too, I think that for a new soap maker, if a soap maker just knew how to build their own recipe in a soap calculator, it might help take away some of the mystery and some of the fear of not knowing how to build a recipe and what you want in a bar of soap so that you get that, analysis paralysis, decision making paralysis, and you just don't know. So it's much easier to ask and hope that someone can give you a recipe instead of going through trial and error, maybe wasting a lot of ingredients and money trying to figure it out for yourself. Now, I will say Google is your best friend, and so is YouTube. While there is tons of misinformation out there, there's also tons of reputable YouTubers and websites that will give you a great starting point for a recipe. So today, we're going to go through soapcalc.net, which you can see on your screen now. And this is my preferred website. There's a bunch of different ones. You can Google them, but this is what I use. So if you type in right here, soapcalc.net, it will bring you to this page. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to look so much more complicated than it actually is. It's actually very simple to use. All right, so we are just going to jump in here and we are going to build a recipe. And I will say that the website does look confusing. There's all kinds of buttons, there's all kinds of ads. I understand. But you're going to go to soapcalc.net and right here at the top, recipe calculator. That's all you need. You can ignore everything else and all the clickbait and all that stuff. Unnecessary. So on the recipe calculator, this is where you're going to be taken. The first thing you want to do for cold process soap is you want to check that this is clicked NaOH, that is sodium hydroxide, and that is what we use for cold process soap. KOH is potassium hydroxide, and that's what you would use for liquid soap. Now, I'm Canadian. I prefer to work in grams because they are the most accurate because they are the smallest unit. So click on grams. Now, if you have one of those Amazon molds, they hold exactly 1,000 grams of oils perfectly. So we're going to type that in. So, like I said, it's a lot more confusing than it actually is. So we've got step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and step 6. And then you're going to scroll down to step 7. Anyway, back to the top. So you can see here, form fields, user entry is green, read only is white. So in the green for grams, we're going to put in 1,000. I prefer to use lye concentration, which means that of my lye water and of my sodium hydroxide and my lye water, we're going to have 35% is going to be sodium hydroxide and the other 65% will be water. Now you can choose any of these. Up here it starts at 38. That is the amount that you're going to use for hot process. Hot process soap, where you cook it in a crock pot, requires more water. But for cold process soap, you don't need that much water. Now, if you're new, I would suggest starting with between 30 and 33%. So let's just say you're new, but you're not that new. 33%. Now, superfat over here, the default is 5%. Lots of soap makers use that. Lots of soap makers go up to 7 or 8%. I personally prefer 7% because I have dry skin. For fragrance, it defaults to 31 grams per kilogram. That is 3.1%. I like 5% of fragrance. So I'm going to type in 50 grams per kilogram. Now also too, depending on the fragrance that you're using, you're going to need to look up the the IFRA guidelines and see what you're allowed to use, because you might not be able to use 5% of a particular fragrance. You might only be able to use 3%. So we have already made it through steps 1 through 4. We're over halfway there. Now you're going to come down here and we are going to plug in the basic soap recipe that you're going to find all over the internet, which is basically equal parts olive oil, coconut oil, palm oil, and then a little bit of castor oil. And the great thing about Soap Calc is you can just walk your way through all of these different oils, and can you see on the left-hand side those numbers are changing? So if you don't know anything about apricot kernel oil, which by the way is amazing in skincare because it's very fast absorbing, you can see that apricot kernel oil is going to give you hardness of 6, cleansing of 0, but don't worry, even if your soap has a 0% cleansing, it still cleans. So that's irrelevant for us, except for the fact that you don't want your soap to be too high in cleansing because then it's going to strip your skin. It's super conditioning, has 0 bubbly qualities, etc., etc. So that's what we're going to look at. So we're just clicking our way through. Everything is beautiful. We're going to scroll down on our list and you're going to see there's so many options, and we're going to choose olive oil. And if we double click olive oil, it's going to put it over here automatically for us. And you can either choose percentage or grams. I like to work in percentages because then you can just change your total amount up here and it will automatically update your percentages. So we are going to say 30 to 32% olive oil. So now we said we wanted coconut oil. So we're going to scroll up to the coconut oil. 76-degree coconut oil is basically the coconut oil you're going to find in the grocery store. So we're going to choose that one, double click it, and then put in our 32%. Then we're going to use palm oil, and we're going to come down here, palm oil, double click that one, and do 32%. Now, if you were to do this, hit calculate, you're going to get an error because it's going to tell you your formula does not equal 100%. You need to add 4% of something. So, okay. So we are going to go back and we're going to add a little bit of castor oil, because castor oil is going to help stabilize the bubbliness and just overall make your soap just that much more luxurious. So 4%. Now, we have already moved through steps 1 through 6. We are almost there. Now you have to click Calculate Recipe. And what you can do, say you want to play around with recipes and compare their properties, you can click multiple tabs right here. And that will let you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different recipe tabs open at the same time. So we've calculated. Now we're going to view or print, and it's going to pop up on another screen, and we can name this basic soap recipe. Now you can even view the INCI names, which will pop up another screen and give you all of that lovely information. And you can print the recipe. And you can choose to print it to your printer or print it to PDF. This is a great way to save all your recipes on your computer and make notes. So we're just going to cancel that for now. Now you can see before I skip ahead, so we have our 1,000-gram batch. It's giving us all of the information that we put in our we typed in. So we have our 1,000-gram batch. We know we have a 33% lye concentration, so 33% of our water mixture is lye, the other 67% is water. It tells us everything. Even though we didn't choose to use it, we have our water as percentage of oil, we have our lye concentration, and we have our water to lye ratio. So those are all things you may see people talk about in soap forums. That's what that is. Now over here, it has our fragrance ratio of 50, which means we're going to need 50 grams of fragrance. This is a great way if you are not super good at math, and I highly recommend if you think you're not good at math, basic math skills are very, very, very important. So get out your calculator, work on that. So anyway, fragrance weight, this is going to calculate it for us. We need 50 grams, and then it's telling us in pounds, ounces, and grams what we need for water. So for this recipe, we need 288 grams of water, 141.85 grams of lye, 1,000 grams total of oils, and 50 grams of fragrance, which comes out to 1,479 and 80.85 grams of soap. That's before the cure. That's what you're going to pour into your mold and set aside. Now the next block is showing us our olive oil, coconut oil, palm, and castor, and the total grams that we need for each one. So 32% olive oil is 320 grams, 320 grams of coconut, 320 grams of palm, and 40 grams of castor oil. Now the next part down here gives us our soap bar quality. Now I want to tell you right now, take this with a grain of salt. These numbers do not mean that your bar is going to be super hard, super soft, super cleansing, bubbly, conditioning, all of that stuff. It's going to be synergistic. For instance, the cleansing is 22. Now, for me personally, I never use more than 20% coconut oil in a bar of soap because it's too drying for my already dry skin. But this is something to look at because now we can go back, and I'm just going to close this tab. Now we can go back and we can change up our recipe. Things that I don't worry about, the INS, I don't worry about the iodine levels. I don't worry about most of it, basically. As long as it's not too cleansing, my bar of soap is going to be fine. So over here we have the different qualities of the ingredients that we're using, the different properties. And one thing that most soap makers will tell you that these two numbers here, linoleic and linolenic, you want the combined number to be less than 15 to avoid the dreaded orange spots. Now, that is something like your soap will still be usable, but it won't be sellable. So, something to watch out for when you're building a soap recipe. Try and keep those numbers combined under 15. Otherwise, the rest of it, stearic acid is something that's very hard. And I didn't specifically make this tutorial to go through every single property of oils, but it definitely is something that if you want to know more about, say, palmitic qualities, which obviously based on the name comes from your palm oil, you can Google what that does for your soap. So also too, you can also type in here. So in additives, say I want to add 2 tablespoons of goat milk powder. We can type that in there, and I typed tablespoon wrong. And it also is supposed to be capitalized, but whatever. And then we can add, say, the color of mica that we're going to use. We're going to add some clay, so we'll type in the type of clay we're going to use. And we're going to type in the name of the fragrance that we're going to use as well. And over here, you can make notes. You can type in notes about, maybe this fragrance oil discolors, maybe it's accelerating, maybe it rices. These are all things that next time you come around to make this soap, you might want that information because you might not remember. So that is the quick and easy how to use soap calc. So now we're going to go back and say, I was watching Angela and she has a slightly different recipe, so I want to change it up. So what are we going to do? So Angela uses hemp seed oil. So let's find hemp seed oil and we're going to double click on it. And yeah, that's where we're going to stop. So I also said that I don't like using a lot of coconut oil. So we're going to bounce that all the way down to 20%. We're going to hit calculate because we don't want to do the math. Oh, and it gives us a warning that there's no amount here. So we're going to use 5% hemp seed oil. So we're going to hit calculate, and it says that our total percent does not equal 100. Add 7%. So we are going to add 7 here. So that would be 39. And it comes out to 100. And because we've clicked multiple tabs, it's not going to overwrite the tab that we already have open. So calculate, view or print, and it brings up our second one. So there's our old one, here's our new one. And this is hemp seed oil. So it tells us how much water we need and how much lye we need, and the numbers have changed because we're using different oils. And then when we get down to the bottom, we can see that our hardness has changed. Let me just give that a scroll. So hardness has gone down because we've increased our soft oils. The cleansing has gone down because we've decreased our coconut oil. But our conditioning has gone up. Our bubbly has gone down, and our creamy has stayed the same. And now our linoleic and linolenic amounts now equal 12, and before they were 8, so we're still below that 15%. So you can see, like, you can create many recipes and compare all of the different properties and get it to a point where you like it. Now for me personally, you can see back here, my coconut oil I took down to 20%, but the cleansing is still kind of high for me. I have dry skin and I don't like my cleansing that high. So it's not just coming from the coconut oil, it is also coming from the palm oil. So let's say we drop the palm oil down to 25%. And we're like, I really want to really kick my recipe up a notch and make it more luxurious. Let's add a butter. So what butter do we want to add? So you can play around. Aloe butter, like some of these butters are not real butters. They're hydrogenated vegetable oil that are whipped with another ingredient, and then they call it aloe butter, or they call it, whatever, avocado butter, that kind of thing. You're not really getting something fabulous the way it sounds. Like I've bought hemp seed butter before, and it's just hydrogenated canola oil, I think, with some hemp seed oil, and it's whipped, and it's just, yeah, it's not the great and wonderful thing like it sounds. So let's go for a butter that we know. So that we know is actually a real butter, so cocoa butter. Let's double click the cocoa butter and hit calculate, and it's telling us that there's nothing in there. So let's say we put 5% and hit calculate. Oh, we need to add 2 more percent. So here we go. So 1%, I'm gonna round up my castor oil to 5%. And I'm going to make this cocoa butter 6%. Gonna hit calculate, we're at 100, fabulous, and we're gonna view the recipe. And this is our cocoa butter recipe. And what do we have? So it's saying water has changed again. Our lye has changed again because we have changed the properties of the oils and butters that we're using. And we're gonna scroll down to the bottom here. So cleansing, still kind of high for me, 14, but we're still solidly in the hardness zone. Tons of conditioning, plenty of bubbles, and the creaminess is great, and the other two I don't really care about. So, and our linoleic and linolenic are still below 15. So I'm like, you know what? Still not super happy with the cleansing. I want to bring it down a little further. So let's bring the palm down to 20. Actually, you know what? Let's look at a recipe that we're gonna X the palm out of there. This is a very typical recipe that you're gonna see from many vegan soap makers. So most vegan recipes have olive, coconut, avocado, and cocoa butter in combination. Sometimes you even throw in some shea butter in there, but let's just leave it at there. So, and I know olive oil is very expensive right now, so we'll just say 30 grams of that, 20 or 30% olive, 20% coconut, 20% avocado, 5% castor, 10% cocoa butter. Where does that get us? We still need 15%. That's a lot. So let's go to 35% olive, 15% coconut, and that's going to leave us still needing another 5%, 25% avocado. There we go, we're at 100%. So like I said, we're just playing around and learning how to use soap calc. So view the recipe. All right, so our linoleic and linolenic are 8% or 8 total, so that's awesome. And what tells us what our water and our lye are, which you know is the most important part of using a calculator, is making sure that amount is correct for your sodium hydroxide. All right, so we're still nice and hard. Our cleansing is down to 13%, awesome. Our conditioning is still super high. Our bubbly is good, our creamy is good, fabulous. So this is a recipe that I see a lot, or that well, how do I phrase that? This is a very common vegan recipe that does not use palm because palm is very controversial and it doesn't use any animal fats. So if you're looking for that kind of recipe, you can play around with these percentages and get to a point where you're really happy with the cleansing value and all of the other values. Now let's just do one more here and let's just click all these out. We're just hitting the little minus and getting rid of all of our amounts. So we are going back to the beginning. NaOH for cold processed soap, our grams, 1,000. Our lye concentration, we're going to actually bump this up to 35%. Our superfat's going to stay at 7 because that's what I like. And my fragrance is 50 grams per kilogram. All right, so most soap makers use olive oil. So we're going to use our olive oil. We are going to use some coconut oil, which by the way, you do not need in a recipe. You can make soap without coconut oil. You can actually make soap with just one ingredient. You can do 100% coconut oil, 100% olive oil, 100% lard or tallow. 100% of anything else, you're kind of getting into the territory where you might not have a great soap, but if you want to experiment, you totally should. All right, so olive and coconut. You know what? We have a big old bucket of tallow that we want to use up. So we are going to go down and find beef tallow. Now, you know someone who's a hunter and you have access to bear, deer tallow, maybe a farmer for goat tallow. Amazing. You should try it and see how it works. All right, so we have all of our coconut tallow. And now we want to use, what do we want to use? Let's use a little bit of shea butter. So we're going to add some shea butter. And then we are going to go find our castor oil because I like using castor oil in every single soap that I make. So there we go. So let's say we are going to use 25%, 20, 20, 25. So, and we're going to say that's 25. So 50, 60, 78, that's 95. So what are we going to do? We're going to bump olive up to 30%. You can do whatever you want. So calculate recipe, viewer print, and there we go. So first thing I always look at is my linoleics. So 7, fabulous. It's giving us our water and lye solution, excellent. And you can see that the amount of water we need is actually a little bit less overall because we chose a lye concentration of 35%. So we're going to be using 2% more water. We have our breakdown of our olive, coconut, tallow, shea butter, and castor oil. And here are our properties. So we have 44 hardness, 15 cleansing, 52 conditioning, 20 bubbly, and 34 creamy. And of course, there's lots of additives that you can put into your soap that are also going to affect these numbers. I mean, if you're using goat's milk and clay and sugar and other things and salt, those things are all going to affect it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's a different video. So there we go. We have formulated a tallow recipe. And like I said, you can change the percentages of these to be anything that you want, and you just have to go back and calculate and see what it looks like. So I feel like that was a little bit rambly, but I'm hoping that it helps you maybe take away some of the fear or the confusion when it comes to calculating your own recipe. One of the best ways to learn about these different oils and butters, and look, there's even Crisco here, is to just click on the item and look at, this is one, so this is just, these are the amounts for just the oil that we have clicked and highlighted. And then under all, these are the properties of all of our things together. So yeah, so I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them below and I will help you, because I love to talk about soap. It is my favorite thing to talk about. I'm sure I annoy all of my friends and coworkers. But otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and found some value. If you do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe for more soapy content. And if you have anything that you want to learn about or you'd like to see a video about, please also leave that comment below. In the meantime, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks for watching.